I yield myself such time as I may consume, and I welcome my ranking member.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
Good to see you too. I want to welcome all of you to this very critical hearing on the systematic and accelerating violence against predominantly Christian communities in Nigeria. For the record, this is my 12th hearing focused exclusively on Nigeria, with scores of other hearings on human trafficking, religious freedom, food insecurity, human rights focused in part on Africa. I've led 3 trips, human rights trips to Nigeria. I want to thank our distinguished witnesses for being here today to bring light and scrutiny to this unfolding religious freedom catastrophe and to proffer ways to mitigate and to end the violence and the hate. Nigeria is ground zero, the focal point of the most brutal and murderous anti-Christian persecution in the world today. Moderate Muslims who speak out against the radical Islamists or refuse to conform with the serial killers are murdered as well. I applaud President Trump's recent decisive action to redesignate Nigeria as a country of particular concern for engaging in and tolerating severe violations of religious freedom. One of our witnesses today, Bishop Wilfred Anagbe from the Diocese of Makurdi, testified before our subcommittee last March. He said, in part, militant Fulani herdsmen are terrorists. They steal and vandalize, they kill and boast about it, they kidnap and rape, and they enjoy total impunity from elected officials. None of them have been arrested and brought to justice, close quote. Today, by Zoom, Bishop Anabe will say, in part, on the 13th of March, 2025, when I last appeared before this committee, I warned that the situation was dire and demanded urgent attention. Tragically, the past half year has proven those warnings understated. The continued attacks on vulnerable Christians, villages by the Fulani ethnic militia and their counterparts, both in the middle belt of Nigeria and elsewhere in the country. In my own diocese of Makurdi, you are all familiar with the massacres of Saturday, the 13th of June in Yolawada, where 278 persons, men, women, and children were killed in a manner too gory to describe here by people shouting Allah Akbar, while slaughtering their victims. It took the prayer of the Holy Father, Pope Leo, on Sunday, the 14th of June, for the government of Nigeria to even acknowledge this evil. Even so, the federal government still seeks to downplay the numbers and has yet to properly care for the survivors, even as I speak, as he will be speaking momentarily by way of Zoom. Abductions of the clergy and laity remain rampant. Priests and pastors are prime targets for elimination. In 2015, one of our colleagues, a member of this subcommittee and also this full committee, I should say, and of Foreign Affairs, and a former House colleague and Green Beret officer, and now U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, he was deployed in 2015 to Nigeria as part of a Nigerian, he was part of the Special Forces to provide training and security assistance to the Nigerian Navy SEALs in their fight against Boko Haram. During this time there, he said yesterday, a couple days ago, more than 300 girls were reported missing because of Boko Haram's extremist violence. Working alongside his team, Ambassador Waltz supported Nigerian SEAL operations that ultimately helped rescue many of these girls from the oppressive conditions imposed by Sharia law. This past Tuesday, Ambassador Waltz also said at a special seminar on Nigeria that the situation in Nigeria now has only grown more dire. He went on to say, churches burn, mothers bury their children for the crime of singing Amazing Grace, pastors are beheaded for preaching the Sermon on the Mount, and entire villages awaken to gunfire simply by calling Jesus their Lord. This is not random violence. It is deliberate persecution as northern militant groups enforce Sharia law and unleash targeted attacks on Christian communities. He also pointed out, and it was this week, that 25 girls went missing, many of whom who will now vanish and have vanished into the dark underbelly of extremism and sex slavery. Make no mistake, these ongoing attacks are based on religion, and diverting attention from it denies what we have seen with our own eyes. Yeah, there may be other factors, but religion is driving this. Kill the infidel. We see it in other places, and we're seeing it now, sadly, in Nigeria and it's been going on for many, many years. 13 years ago, in this room, 2012, I chaired a hearing focusing on the slaughter of Christians by Boko Haram, and the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Johnny Carson, testified at that hearing and said, and I quote in part, that the phenomena of Boko Haram is one of discrediting the central government in power for its failure to deliver services to the people. I asked him at the time, are you kidding? I responded by asking why Boko Haram abducts and rapes Christian girls and uses force and coercion, even death, to convert Christians to Islam. On a trip to an IDP camp in Jos, I met many survivors. One man who we had testify here, named Adama, who they took him out of his house. His wife was screaming, please don't hurt my husband. They put a AK-47 to his cheek and said, you renounce your faith or we'll kill you. He said, well, I'm ready to meet my Lord. They asked him again. He repeated that, and they shot him. They blew his face very, very horribly. He survived. And when I met him, I invited him to come and testify. He did. And he said, you've got to realize who Boko Haram is and stop this idea, this is my words, but his sentiment of denial, of saying, it's nothing to see here. So I asked Johnny Carson further, why won't they designate Boko Haram, at least, if not a CPC country, as a foreign terrorist organization? And he said they don't believe it. They're not a foreign terrorist organization. I worked on that for 3 years, additional hearings. On the day I was marking up my bill, and it was called the Boko Haram Terrorist Designation Act of 2013, to put Congress on record demanding an FDO designation, that day, the administration declared Boko Haram a foreign terrorist organization. I was very happy with it, but we could have done that 3 years earlier, maybe had found out what their sources of weapons and funding and everything else might have been, thereby, again, mitigating some of the harm. For too long, the world has looked away, a culture of denial, as radical Fulani militants, Boko Haram and ISIS West Africa, have waged a relentless campaign of terror, murder, and displacement across Nigeria, including the states of Plateau, Benue, and Kaduna. According to Open Doors, and I just want to say something about Open Doors. I've worked with Open Doors for 40 years. I knew the founder, Brother Andrew, an absolutely honest and committed man, and that organization to this day continues to speak truth to power all over the world, including in Nigeria. Well, they have said, Open Doors, more Christians are slaughtered in Nigeria than anywhere else in the world. I co-chair the China Commission. I just left a hearing that we're holding over on the Senate side on religious persecution there, against everyone, against the Falun Gong, against the Christians, against the Buddhists in Xinjiang, not the Buddhists, the Buddhists in Tibet, and the Muslims in Xinjiang. And while they kill many, they incarcerate and harass more than they slaughter. These groups in Nigeria are doing just that, slaughtering. Another group has said over 52,000 Christians in Nigeria have reportedly been targeted and killed by Islamist extremists, while approximately 34,000 moderate Muslims have been murdered as well since 2009. And, that is less focused upon. I raise it every time, and I hope we all will. They're killing those who don't conform to the radical Islamist view, and so they get killed too. I met with many imams on trips to Nigeria as well as here, and they say, if we speak out, we'll be firebombed too. During a visit, 19,000 churches have also been attacked. More than 7,000 have been murdered in this year alone. During my visit to Jos in 2013, I visited many churches that have been firebombed in Jos. And I listened to the survivors and was moved almost to tears, and to tears with some, when they talked about the numbing loss and pain of losing loved ones. And the churches were decimated, each and every one of them, either by cars coming in and plowing everybody and destroying the physical, or by bombs, and of course, always the ever-present AK-47. They pleaded with their own government and the world to end the cruelty and violence. And I've been raising it, as have many others ever since. About 5 million Christians have been displaced and forced into internally displaced persons camps within Nigeria and refugee camps at regional and sub-regional borders, according to an Inter-Society report. Open Doors reports, and again, I hope we can finally get beyond just saying nothing's to see here. While Christians used to be vulnerable only to Muslim-majority northern states, this violence continues to spread into the Middle Belt and even further south. The attacks are shockingly brutal. Many believers are killed, particularly men, while women are often kidnapped and targeted for what? Sexual violence, rape, and other abuse. More believers are killed for their faith in Nigeria than anywhere else in the world. These militants also destroy homes, churches, and livelihoods. And many people don't go to school anymore. One estimate is 10,000 schools have been closed due to this violence. The Nigerian government has a fundamental constitutional obligation to protect its own citizens. Yet the brutal reality is that the perpetrators of these crimes operate with impunity. The lack of accountability sends a chilling message that the lives of Christian farmers and their families are expendable. This failure has rightfully been called out by the President of the United States, President Trump, and Secretary of State Rubio. The United States must not stand by idly. I've introduced resolutions, and others have been introduced as well. Res 82, I had done that previously on 82, asking that the Biden administration, we had an interesting conversation and debate on that resolution. It did pass 26 to 21. And part of the argument that was made by Mr. Meeks and my very distinguished colleague to my left is that it's the President and the Secretary of State that needs to make that call, not us. I think we can encourage something. That's what it did. But nevertheless, now they've made the call. And I think we need to, double down and try to stop this. Res 860, which I've introduced, also calls on conditioning U.S. foreign assistance, and it must be tied to progress from the Nigerian government in preventing persecution, prosecuting perpetrators, and protecting all communities. Second, it would provide direct humanitarian assistance, especially to faith-based groups working on the ground in the Middle Belt. What we're hearing is that it's not getting through. People are hungry, so we need to make sure that they're helped. And third, we must impose targeted sanctions pursuant to the Global Magnitsky Act, using visa bans and access freezes against individuals and entities responsible for these gross human rights abuses. President Trump, as I conclude, said, Christianity is facing an existential threat in Nigeria. The United States cannot stand by while atrocities are happening in Nigeria. I yield to my good friend.